Hello and welcome to a brand new show on my channel called
The Greatest Games Ever Made!
where I take a look at a game that is widely considered to be one of the best games ever conceived by the likes of man to determine if it's really as great as they say. For our inaugural episode, and to celebrate Zelda Month, we'll be taking a look at the one and only Ocarina of Time. Well, let's not waste any more time. Away we go!
Was I supposed to follow you?
No.
Ocarina of Time. You truly hold a special place in my video game playing history. It was the first Zelda game that I had ever played, thanks to this amazing little disc. I can still remember watching my sister playing it and thinking, that looks really awesome! It wasn't long after that I had started my own game, and I was hooked immediately. Everything seemed so epic in scale, and your goals seemed to hold importance to the world around you. You felt like you were the hero of time. It was the first time in a long time that my imagination ran away with a game's story and world. Afterwards, the Zelda games became some of my absolute favorites. In a lot of ways, it felt like I was finding a lost treasure that should have been a part of my life long before it was. The very first game system that was truly just mine was the N64, and I still have it to this day. But I had never had a chance to play any of the Zelda games until the GameCube all those years later. But is Ocarina really deserving of the title greatest game ever, as many people claim it to be? In order to answer that, first we need to look at the history of games going from 2 to 3 dimensions. Mario 64 set the standard for games in 3D, so it was only natural that Nintendo wanted to do to their little green hero what they had already done for Mario. I think somewhere in the discussion on how to do that, they decided that the game needed to be a more combat-focused experience than your typical Zelda game. All the Zelda games up to that point were much more about discovering secrets or solving a difficult puzzle. Well, all except one, which was also a more combat-based game, like Ocarina. And for those waiting in suspense, that would be Zelda 2. Yeah, I know. This one is considered the black sheep of the franchise, but I don't think it's that bad. Really frustratingly hard, but not bad. I think the reason it feels so different is because, in order to make something new, because it was the sequel to one of Nintendo's biggest games, they made it a side-scrolling action-y kind of game. Jump forward a few years and now they have to reinvent themselves yet again. But this time, they had to incorporate a whole new dimension into the mix. Because you know, Bit Wars or whatever. They already had an excellent blueprint on how to do this thanks to another side-scroller that had just made the jump successfully. It makes sense to me that the outcast of the Zelda games would be Nintendo's jumping off point. Add in Z-targeting and bam, you get some truly revolutionary 3D monster battling action. But I digress. This is all just speculation anyway. We're here to find out if Ocarina of Time can really be considered one of the greatest games ever made. It does have a lot of points in favor of that assumption. Like the soundtrack, for starters. There are some truly outstanding pieces of music in Ocarina, most of which are staples not just for the Zelda series, but all of video gamedom. I've always fancied myself a musician, so being able to pretend to play an Ocarina was always amazing to me. One of the game's themes is definitely music, and the music in Ocarina is just one of the ways that it sucks you in. You end up losing hours exploring the caves and dungeons of Hyrule, the music making you feel like you're part of the game's world. Maybe it's because I have such a love for music, but it was definitely something that initially grabbed me about Ocarina. Music seemed integral to not only the game's mechanics, but to the story as well. I've already mentioned how revolutionary Z-targeting was, but just the amount of things Link was able to do this go around is mind-boggling. He can roll, dodge, jump, block, and swing his sword in all sorts of directions. The way Link controlled was so good that it's remained mostly unchanged for all the 3D Zeldas. Waving your goddamn hands around like the village drunk covered in fire ants does not count as a combat system.
Oh, come on, man. I was just trying to be different.
Well, guess what? It didn't fucking work. Ocarina has some fantastic atmosphere as well, especially in the dungeons. It feels so ancient and undisturbed. You can almost see the dust trickling off the light in the Spirit Temple. You feel completely isolated battling Redeads underneath the well. And even with how much of a pain it can be, you can feel the weight of the water pushing you down in each moment of the water temple as you dive into its depths for the 100th fucking time. That's pretty impressive even for one of the most annoying levels ever to be in a video game. Speaking of the water temple, that doesn't mean that this game doesn't have some flaws. Time has not been kind to parts of Ocarina. See what I did there, time? Ocarina of Time. You'll find yourself constantly fighting the camera just to get it to go where you need it to. And like most N64 games, your biggest enemy is going to be the control stick. These things can get absolutely wrecked after too much use. And because of that, Link will just sometimes run straight off a platform and into the dark abyss below. This is not a problem with the GameCube version, and it's not really a fault with the game, but it can be a bit frustrating when playing on the N64. Hyrule Field is also terribly empty. Yeah, there's stuff to do and secrets to find, and I do like how all the areas loom in the distance waiting for you, but after like the 100th time running across a vacant overworld, it can get pretty boring. And of course, we can't forget about everyone's favorite little annoyance, Navi. Hearing her yell, "Hey, and listen," can drive you up a wall when all you want to do is just play the game. Listen. We are literally right in the middle of the fucking desert, Navi. And don't even get me started on this fucking guy. Now that we've gone over the good and the bad with this game, can it really be considered the be-all, end-all greatest game ever made? Well, no. In my opinion, it's not. It's honestly not even in my top 5 Zelda games. That doesn't mean it's bad or anything. No, actually, it's pretty freaking awesome. I do really love this game, and I know millions of others do as well. But I think it has way too many glaring issues to be considered the best Zelda game ever, let alone the best game ever. To call something the greatest is subjective anyway. It may be the greatest game ever to some people. Actually, a lot of people. And that's perfectly fine. Ocarina of Time has undoubtedly touched millions of lives and has helped shape the video games of today. For that alone, I think it can be considered one of the greatest games ever made. And as always, nobody loves you. Hey, if you agreed or even disagreed with the opinions in this video, then why not comment and tell me about it? I'd love to hear what you have to say. And if you liked it enough, there's a little like button you can click to show the whole world that you liked it. And then, if you really like to hear me ramble on about nothing, then I have a whole bunch of other videos on my channel you can check out. My last one was on this really terrible DOS game that I found called Strife. And yeah, it filled me with a lot of strife. I'm starting to realize that I should probably script these parts, but I don't really give a shit enough. So, you know, like, comment, subscribe, follow me on Facebook and Twitter and you know, all that shit. I just said a lot of bad words. I'm a bad person. Everybody loves Ocarina of Time. Do 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 do. Doop.